Hello, everybody. Going to jump into a new structured word inquiry investigation. This one, I have given the title of this question, what is a successful structured word inquiry investigation? I'm going to start this one by kind of offering this response to my own question. I'll just let you read that yourself. Some key ideas here, this idea of going forward, when we're talking about questions and such. And my hope is that after we get through this, we can revisit this response and see if it has added richness from the investigation. Along the way, we're going to, of course, learn from the structure and history of words. I'm going to try to highlight the structure and meaning test. That's really a very central process of investigation, I guess, of making decisions, and it's tied directly to this concept of morphological and etymological families. It's just so crucial to understand. We're going to take a little side path along the way to make sense of assimilated prefixes that are relevant to this investigation, and a few other things. But it turns out that a stroll in the park is a very good place to start this journey. So because that's where it started. What happened was I was on a camping trip with grade 5s from Nueva Schoo in this amazing Presidio right in the middle of San Francisco. And on the day after the night we stayed over, Liza, the middle school head, came to join us and go on the walk with us. And at one point along the way, she said, "Hey, Pete, I have this question for you about a word." And then she said something very interesting. I just love. She said, "I guess that's what happened today." So before we got to the question, she just paused to know that she's running into words and asking questions that she didn't think to ask before. And that makes me very pleased. And it also makes me think a little bit about my role here at Nueva this year. I have this lovely official title, visiting scholar. I've kind of been thinking about my informal title being something more of a question collector, and actually this investigation has helped me frame it a bit more as being a question provoker, which I kind of like to. And this idea that highlights this idea that my favorite assessment of instruction is the quality of the questions it provokes, and this idea of being able to ask new questions because we have new understanding is just such a central part of, I think, this whole investigation. So the question that Liza had for me was, have you ever investigated the word success? And the reason she had that question is because on the way over, she had been listening to a TED Talk on the key to success by this Dr. Duckworth. Now, this Angela Duckworth has come up with this hypothesis that grit is the key to success. And she came to this, the story she tells is that she noticed that there was not necessarily any correlation between kids' intelligence and success in their grade 7 math when she was teaching them. And she came up, after looking at all sorts of different situations after that, with the hypothesis that grit is the best indicator of success. And we could talk about what grit means. But the question for the moment that Liza wanted to get help with was this idea, well, maybe I need to think about the history and structure of success to make sense of this even better. Now, these are the 4 questions that I'm always using as a guide. But in this case, we were on the trail, so we didn't have access to anything, but I know these questions well enough to just use them. And so we started chatting, and words, we talked about what success is, but then we started talking about related words like process and access and recess. And the one reason was, I have to say, that I have certainly encountered the CESS bound base before. So I was quite confident that there was one, and these words I've connected before to the idea of success. But I had some other questions, but then here's where I take a little side trick. Once I type these on the screen, one thing that struck me that is important to notice is that access and success, they have these 2 C's, but recess and process just have the 1. Now, so this is a little opportunity to take advantage of something else. We need to understand something special about how prefixes work. This is a chart from Real Spelling. We're going to dive into this section, and you'll notice that there's this SUB prefix that has these ones in red below. These ones in red, they're variants of this main prefix SUB. So this information from etym-online is about all of these prefixes. And it's nice when you check this out, because we think about SUB for subway, submarine is below, but we see here it's not only under, beneath, it also has a sense of behind. And when we take a look at this, I decided I'd just present to you a few words here with some of these assimilated prefixes. And here we go. You might notice something going on here when you look at those words. And I've highlighted the prefixes, and now we see what's going on here. If you look at the prefixes, which of these variants is chosen, it's not random. It always has the same final letter that we have at the as an initial letter of what it's being fixed to. And so this is something we need to know. These are called assimilated prefixes, and there's a good reason for it. And a very brief example is if we say, I often do this with suffix, because people know about pre for prefix, but what's that SUF? Well, it's a variant of the SUB. And if you say subfix, and then you say it faster, suffix, as you say it, it's so physically difficult to go from that we've assimilated the final part of the prefix to the initial part of the base or stem to which we're adding. And that's how these things work. And once you see this, it's actually kind of nice when we look at assimilated prefix. If I actually analyze the word assimilated, I couldn't resist. It's very similar to the word similar because they share a base. And so that's going to help you remember that. But a little quick aside, let's get back to the main event here. And so we've got these ideas. Liza and I are chatting. We think about those words. We think that they're related. One thing we can do now that I can write down the text and look at it, we can see the CESS. Well, instead of writing all of these, how about we try a little matrix? And if we have those words, we could add some suffixes. Now, as we're having this conversation on the trail, though, as Liza says, each question begat more questions, which is a very good thing. And one of the things that came up is, the word succeed is obviously related to success, but it doesn't fit. You can't put that in the same matrix. So what's the nature of that relationship? And then somehow we got from recess and recede, and well, wait a second, could intercede and recede be cousins? And then, this was neat, that Grant, the art teacher, was with us, and he had some Italian, he knew an Italian word that he thought had to do with surrender that maybe was related. And then that raised the hypothesis that maybe success and surrender might be linguistic cousins. So we have all these questions, but we have to actually hone in on the central issue now, the meaning. I made this a hypothesized matrix because I actually haven't got evidence yet that these words are actually connected in meaning. What is the common underlying meaning in this base? Because you can't share a base if you don't have a connection in meaning. So, and then that also so that's what I'm asking, how are recess and access related? And the other thing that came up in the conversation was, wait a second, what about the other recesses? There's children playing at recess, and there's a recess like the hole in something. Are they actually related? So we have all these questions, but we were on the trail. We didn't have access to many resources. So when I got home, I'm enough of a word geek that I couldn't resist checking out on etym-online. So what I'm going to do now is take that lovely discussion that came up on the trail. We get to toss around some hypotheses, but it's not until we have a way to test those hypotheses that we can really go forward with an understanding. And etym-online is certainly a rich place to start. So I looked up the word success. I see the word succeed. So they're obviously in the same etymological family. I click succeed, takes me down, and I start to see this goes back to this Latin root cedere, to go, move, and then I see this word seed, which may be how, because I'd never even thought about the word seed, like to give up something, which is right there. So I look at seed, and then I'm just to give you a quick hint on the etymon line. When you see the PIE root, there's lots of stuff that's quite interesting, Proto-Indo-European roots, but we don't need them for right now. So I'm just going to move, just stop there. And what I'm saying is now we've found our Latin, our ultimate Latin root, cedere, to yield, give place, and ultimately from to go, proceed, leave. Now, I just have to share that I made an earlier form of this video in which I was mispronouncing this Latin word as cedere, which would actually apparently mean sit, which is ironic since I'm going for the word for to go. Fortunately, I have friends who, when I make these kinds of mistakes, they help me think, and it's a wonderful mistake because I'm applying what I know about the phonology of C in English to Latin, but this is Latin. That doesn't follow English rules. So hopefully I'm doing this appropriately now. Cedere is the Latin word that had this ultimate original meaning of to go, proceed, leave. And that meaning is echoed in the English word seed, where we now see that C operating that way. So we got a whole bunch of stuff going on here. How does the English base CEDE that has the Latin root cedere relate to succeed? Well, what we need, I think, to do here, one thing we get to do is really highlight these words I just used, base. This is an English base that we name by spelling it CDE, C-E-D-E. It's pronounced seed. The base word is seed. The Latin root, however, is cedere, and the root is the historical thing. The English base is the current English thing. Now, we'll go back in this trail. So how did we do this whole thing? We went to etymon line, and I started by typing success in there because that's where we started. And when I do that, what I get pulled down this trail. Success led me to succeed led me to seed, and then I find this Latin root cedere, to go, proceed. Now, I've often used this image of the circle to signal etymological relatives. So these words, because they were all linked within etymon line, etymology dictionary reference, these, I'm told by Douglas Harper that his understanding is that these are all etymological relatives. They're related in meaning. So that's what we've done. And so what we have, these are all members of the same etymological family. But there's something really interesting that you can do with etymon line. I can go ahead and not just take that root and put it right in the search engine. And if I do that, what I'm going to be finding is a wider family of this members of the extended family. When I did that, these are all words that came up that are also in that circle. So these words all share this Latin root. I've got a bigger family to explore, a nice bank. And now we can kind of revisit the questions that we started with, but now with some more rigor, some more evidence, some ways to test which hold up, which do not. So let's take them one at a time. How does success and succeed work? Well, we found them. They're etymological relatives. So now we're no longer too worried about the fact that they don't have the same spelled base, because why should they? They have the same root, though. And then we thought about intercede and recede came up, and look at that. They're right in my family here. This Italian, I can't speak much to Italian, but that led to this other hypothesis of success and maybe surrender being linguistic cousins. Now, what I did, though, is I went on to etymon line, I looked up surrender, and I find out it is not from the same bloodline. It's not related. It's from Old French for give back. It doesn't get to go in the circle. So some of our questions we got to support, other ones we get to reject, and that's great. That's science. So put this over here. What we've been talking about so far is about etymological relatives, and we define those as those that share a root. But what about the morphological relatives that share the structural base element? Now, you may have seen me work with matrices before. A matrix represents members of the same morphological family that share a base element, the same written base. We're hypothesizing CESS is the bound base. They all share this root. So here, what am I doing with this Latin root inside my matrix? Well, I'm just signaling that this base has that root. And any of the words in this matrix have that root, which I have now tested. But what I'm going to do is step back here and kind of really focus on this idea of the structure and meaning test. And I just use that as a frame for how we find out which words actually share a base, which ones don't, and here we go. So we started with success. We've identified this base, bound base CESS, and we did that because not only did we find success has this root, we found that it has a prefix SUC, a CESS base, and when I rewrite that SUC, CESS, we have evidence that the word sum works. So success gets to go. Not only does success, just do this again. Not only does success share a root, so it gets to be in the circle, it gets to be in the morphological family. It's going to go in this square. Now, I could find another word in this family from the circle. Notice my square is inside the circle, which means I don't get to be in the square unless I'm in the circle. I had a grade 5 student the other day articulate that brilliantly, much better than I just did now. So we're going to look for another word that might fit in here. Well, here's this interesting word, abscess. Now, I know that it's etymologically related because I got it by finding that root. Now, the question is, I can go here and I can say, well, here's a CESS. I'm going to just put the plus sign there right away without worrying about it. Now I can test it. If that analysis is right, I have to do something. I have to prove that ABS is actually a prefix. Well, I believe, I hadn't thought about this. I have a prefix chart here. Well, oh, there it is. There's an AB. It's proposing there's an ABS assimilated prefix, but I'm going to go over to my dictionary and double check. Another place, another source, I see AB. Oh, there's an ABS hyphen, and it says a variant of AB before C, Q, and T, and then it gives me abscond, abstain. I think I've encountered these before. We could do more work on that, but this is what happens. We've found evidence of a CESS. We think that is in this one. So now we've developed this idea of an ABS prefix, and it looks like we have evidence for it. ABS, CESS, and now abscess. Not only does it get to go in the circle, it gets to go in here. However, our word succeed, there's just nothing you can do to this word. There's no analysis you could do that would result in a CESS base. So no problem. It's not that there's nothing wrong here. It's great. Succeed, we did find in the same etymological family. It just doesn't go in here. It's not a morphological family. And this is the structure and meaning test. The structure test is, can you make a coherent word sum? The meaning test is, do you have evidence of the same root? You don't get to go in the circle at all if you don't share the root. And if you don't share the root, you can't get in the square. If you can make a word sum, you have passed the structure test and you're there. Now, I've gone ahead and done a bunch of analysis this way. I've shown that all of these words, the word sums work and they all share the root. These ones are etymological families, relatives. These are morphological and etymological. The cool thing about this square is that this is referencing something that you've probably seen before, the matrix, and that is the morphological family. Now, what's interesting is I've collected a pile of these words that were sitting around here into a pile because I noticed that intercede, proceed, recede, these words seem to be somehow related, and they are. I can make word sums and show they share a base CEDE. They're all in the same family, so they have their own base. So I have now shown that there's at least two bases that fit within this etymological family. This is the morphological family of CESS. This is the morphological family of CEDE. I think of this as a kind of a family reunion. We're going to a big picnic. All the relatives are invited, aunts, uncles, second cousins, all that. But I'm coming and I bring my picnic blanket for my family. This square, this matrix is my picnic blanket for my immediate family, the closest relatives. This is for my cousin's closest relatives. So we are all in this, have the same roots. We all from the same bloodline, but we do have families within families, and that's how that works. So that, I hope, is helpful. And still, don't forget, we have surrender down here that at one point we thought might be involved in all this, but we proved that it wasn't because the root wasn't the same. So it doesn't get to be invited to that family reunion. So that's a bunch of orthographic study, but let's come back to this idea of grit and as the indicator of success. What has this given to us? Well, that was how I got this idea that I wrote after all this investigation, is that a successful SWI investigation is one that helps us go forward, which we found in this story. Such that we are able to ask questions that we could not previously perceive. And I'm hoping that's what's happening, that we had these questions that Liza was able to start asking because she knows that there's some kind of connection. We needed to get some detail. Some of them didn't stand up, others of them did. Great. And along the way, you encounter new ideas for some of you, perhaps. This business of assimilated prefixes. Now when you see the same letter near each other, near the beginning of a word, you might just start to think, maybe that's a signal of a morphological boundary. Is there a CESS base? Is there a GEST base? Well, we have to prove it. Is there a POSE base that relates to this idea of suppose? Surreal, that's kind of interesting. But now you know when you see these same letters near each other, if the evidence stands up, maybe that's an assimilated prefix. So lots of stuff here, and I hope that you think that this was a successful SWI investigation. Cheers.